Welcome back. So, we're gonna get into some things that I was just looking at. It's crazy. It's crazy. I've already pre planned. I got this written right here. Full circle number 360. My 360 Underground Science episode is gonna be called Full Circle. I already decided 350 made sense to call it the final countdown because I'm stopping at 360. That's the intention. I really need to. If I even make it there at this rate, I've kind of just been like, meh. But so this episode is going to be called The Final Countdown. And like pre-decided before I even knew what topic it would be. What I figured maybe a Shalagram episode, whatever. But anyway, I made this post today. This one here. This hurricane tropical storm Hillary, interestingly, 1L, that is headed towards California has me thinking about possible relationships between certain systems and means of energy exchange. In this case, its origin and destination are at interesting locations with regards to my research, like things I've been coming across. Like, this is not just like over here. I mean, when I say origin, I really think maybe over here. So maybe I'm extending its like source a little further to like over there. But generally from over in this region and going generally over to here. So that's why I put this question mark, like the secondary mantle puncture hole location, maybe, which I've already in my El Nino episode, I'm pretty sure is why El Nino happens, is because of this location where the mantle was physically punctured by, you can see my Earth's Undercurrents video, I guess, if you're interested. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I mean, that's not gonna probably not bring really clarity to it, but that's what I'm talking about, where essentially the mantle was punctured first and foremost over in Pakistan, over here at this location, by a, we'll just not get into it because it invites too much disbelief. So it was punctured here, and then mantle upwelled below the crust and caused the Earth to expand, and it doesn't function under plate tectonics. Caused the Earth to expand. I've mapped the currents in intricate detail across the globe in ways that are just like, science, you're gonna like stop whatever your like excuses are being made to not look at my research and like account for it and just acknowledge its existence and account for it and move on. Like, we don't need to focus on it, but at least acknowledge it and account for it. I mean, it's gonna be focused on at that point, but it's not about me. People make it like it's about me because it's my research. Like, anyway, besides the point, mantle punctured here, currents flowed out everywhere around the globe, and it essentially wasn't stable. It's like drinking from a bottle, like a soda bottle, but you don't allow air to flow and you just start drinking. Like, the bottle is not stable, but if you poke a hole in that bottle, then it will like go back to normal in a way. So what happened was the currents flowed out everywhere around the globe until they ended up poking a hole in the mantle again here as a secondary mantle puncture hole. It's like a vent hole, which was also where the Galapagos hotspot began, as well as was actually this was over there at the time. And this is related to currents that were flowing up this way through under Australia, under North America, colliding another current over here from all the way in Asia, flowing this way to the Mariana Trench and forming that, coming in and colliding, and then creating this region where there's swirling in like a figure-8 structure that then shot down currents along the boundary of South America and cut it, and then it also shot currents northward in like jet streams here. This opened the Yucatan Peninsula in Honduras. This gap here is related to this, and essentially, like the San Andreas Fault and things are like related to these current flows here. Is part of my research. So when I saw this, I was like, that's odd, and immediately just started thinking. So my post I posted, I said, interesting question mark. I wonder if this is related and more. Like, it's not just an earthquake or a hurricane. It's just like, it's hot. There's a lot of moisture in the air. I'm gonna form, and then it forms, and then it moves somewhere at like basically where the winds take it. Like, it's not that random. It's actually energetic. That's what I'm thinking. Energetic exchanges from this location, this mantle puncture hole, to another point that is energetically coupled to it, which I kind of draw it here. I just took a picture. It's from my Earth's undercurrents, 503. I mean, I quickly just go into tracing the currents, so whether or not that will make sense, it's based in a lot of actual research and evidence, technical papers, as much as people doubt that. A lot of research went into this quick video. It's like 12 minutes long, 15 minutes something, where it just here's what's going on to a degree, to the best of my ability. Certainly not everything's perfect, but that's because I'm one person trying to rewrite science and basically doing it. So there's that going on. So I post this at 5:42 Eastern. And perhaps there is an exchange of energy, like a shared electron, and I'm thinking, well, Africa, a lot of hurricanes come over from this general region, just kind of go to North America, and swirl around sometimes and don't actually reach it, but maybe I was thinking there's some kind of energy exchange from specifically this region that like flows this way and then encourages like a shared electron. Literally, it takes this storm, takes the energy across from like an atom of a continent to another continent of an atom, and it exchanges that energy over to the other continent through a physical storm that we call a hurricane at times. Perhaps is kind of what I was thinking when I saw this storm. That's what it made me think about. Okay. So that's what these posts are about. And then in a similar manner, all the water California and now Western US will be receiving recently still seems like concerning precursors for restabilization, I call it, steps in the Earth's mechanics. Like the crust is in an excited state that balances by such processes, like a lot of water being dumped, that lead to rapid changes. So like the water comes in, floods, the earth like gets etched through, weakens, destabilizes, falls to a new equilibrium. Stabilization occurs. I'm not saying like the entire planet or the entire state of California like falls, but like parts like physically can drop into voids below that then leads to higher stability. Like if like everything falls over and then it's stable on the ground, but if everything's like standing tall in a tower, like it's susceptible to imbalances. But if it's on the ground, it's much more stable, even though it's not standing. As tall as it was, it's still more stable. That's kind of my thoughts. And then when I posted this, I look at over here, and that's when I see this, and I'm like, was there an earthquake? And I look, and there was friggin' an earthquake at 2:40, 2:41, like right when I was writing this one. Literally, there's a 5.1 magnitude earthquake as this storm is approaching. I'm like, well. And so that sparked like this chain of events. So I continue writing. At that point, I'm like, well, location of the earthquake. Okay, let me check it out. So I check it out. Here's where the earthquake is. I check it out in the magnetic anomaly map because that's like very relevant, which is here. I find it's like right here, like 3441. I don't know if you guys can see that. Probably not because I'm in the very corner. Let's go up a little bit. So like right here, it was right around here at this boundary. Let me find exactly where the earthquake was. So if we sort by largest magnitude, click that one, 34.41, 119.1819. 34.41, 119.19. 34.41, 119.19. So like right there. At the tip of the mouse. At the top left tip of the mouse. Right like there. Ish. Right there. So like right at the boundary of this thing. I'm like, that's what I understand to be relevant. Like a current, basically the blue is low intensity anomalies, where the pink is high intensity anomalies. We don't really know what to make of it. I've determined where current flows is blue, so current can physically flow, and then where pink is there's physically a mound, like a pillar or like a large wall that supports the crust across all these other pillars that the crust, like upper layers, rest on, like a support structure physically, and then under that support structure is space where current can still flow. So this storm is approaching up this way, and meanwhile it seems, my initial thought was maybe current flows down this way generally and like goes through this way, but like because the storm's approaching, it really is like encouraging it more towards the storm, like pulling undercurrents towards it that then are colliding at this boundary with a high frequency. So if we look here, I have this one open. This is 2.5 plus earthquakes past day, newest first. Let's refresh it. Apparently there's something going on over there too. Did this just happen? Earlier. That one's pretty recent. That one just happened. Some in Texas as well. Let's see where on the magnetic anomaly these are. 31.67, 104.37. It was 34. 31.67, 104.37. 31 something, 104. Pretty much like around this boundary, like right in this region, I guess. Not exactly sure. 67, 31.67, 104.38. Or 68 even. 31.68. 38. So like right there ish, right around there. So around the boundary of this thing, there's some earthquakes at the boundary of this thing, which maybe are again like coming. In that case, it's like not the opposite wall. So this one seemed like it was the opposite. Maybe it's just encouraging the currents to be more intense and turbulent, which is more water with higher rapids. Like, I don't know. I don't know exactly. I'm just like presenting what I see. My initial thought was that it was bringing current there, but that's a little opposite. Like it's actually pushing it that way. Maybe it's actually going this way and then over across here though. Like generally across this way. Because there really is a boundary right here that goes up to what's called the Garlock fault line, which I drew. In one of these, I'll get to it. So let's keep going real quick before I get distracted from these earthquakes. Now that I saw those, actually. But yeah, I was showing though. Look at this swarm. There's earthquake or the same place. Earth 3.2, 3.2. These are the most recent earthquakes today. Newest first. There's Western Texas, and then California, same place, same place. So 1, 2, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 6. 5, 6, 7, 7 out of 9, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 11, 8 out of 12, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, a bunch. And then that one, the 5.1, a bunch of them. Like, just a swarm happening here as this storm is approaching. And it's being called a hurricane. Hurricane. Earthcane? Earthicane? I don't know. Hurricane. Obviously better. Okay. So there's that going on. Okay. I just, perhaps, maybe like, guys, isn't this cool? No, it's just ego looking. It just sounds like ego. Yeah, I was talking about it, and then it just happened simultaneously. It's almost like by simply becoming aware of something, can like induce it. Possibly, it's possible. Like, it's possible that that kind of thing could happen. Some kind of like energy exchange where the universe just like being, I don't know. Like, I think about that a lot with shalograms. Like, maybe they really need to be in the Himalayas where they're from energetically, and who knows, kind of thing. And same thing, like subtle energies, who knows what's going on. I certainly am just learning as I go, like the rest of us, presumably. I don't think anyone out there is like fully learned, and thus no longer learning and just being like completely. Maybe there's people tapping into like infinite consciousness through other means than like reasoning through it, but rather just by like DMT or something. Who knows? I don't know. Akashic records, all those kind of things that I don't have like any real experience with, except for like third person or whatever. Okay, so then here's the location of the earthquake swarm. So right here, this is where I'm like, this is interesting. I mean, obviously it's like a natural disaster, and shouldn't be like, oh, this is amazing. I don't know. Especially because it's not done. I don't know what the future holds. Like, these could be, like, this could have been a precursor. Like, they had a bunch of ones like before these. Look at how many of them there are. And this one I localized to this region, so it's gonna be localized. It's all them, except for a few that the box was a little bigger. Whereas this one is not localized, so there's more like other locations, of which obviously it's a whole globe. But this one's also limited to searching at 2.5 plus. This one I searched in the location and 1.0 plus, so we got just a bunch of them since pretty much yesterday, today. If we go to the largest, let's go to newest. Maybe even refresh this because it's been like an hour. Still got them coming in like every 10, 20, 30 minutes. I wonder if there's like regularity. That one's, I guess, there too. But a bunch of lower ones, but like also 3.2 still, 3.2. Since it happened, 3.9, 3.7. 3.3. These are all since that 5.1, 3.3. So I don't know what the future holds. So maybe like I'm like, should I make this video? Especially call it the final countdown. I was intending to make a 350 the final countdown. So that's what it's gonna be, I guess. But it's kind of like dark in some ways. But anyway, before I get too distracted, the Garlock fault line is this red one, and then here's the San Andreas. So if we look at the map, it's this little triangle. This is the Garlock fault line going up this way over here to Baker. And then San Andreas making this little V shape where they seemingly combine and then go up this way. But there's also, if you look at this, the San Andreas is going up this way. But next to it, there's a parallel line relatively there, and also down there. And also down here at like a greater width parallel line, generally speaking, down here. That I feel like maybe bends, like just like this one bends, like it bends around here. And where it bends is where that mass is of the magnetic anomaly map. This, or the high intensity magnetic anomaly, which I basically interpret to be a huge mass relative to a void of the blue. Relatively speaking. Something that's a hard support structure that current kind of bends around rather than going through. So there's this support structure here that then the current bends around, and that's where this place is right there, as well as the Garlock fault line. Like if we just continue it this way, which it even is on the terrain, one second. Okay. But this Garlock fault line, like it subtly continues right there through here. Maybe involved in this. That's my thoughts. Is it's not like a continuous. It didn't fracture all the way through in the same way that this fault line exists. But over here, like there's some kind of continuation of the energy propagation. And then on top of that, when I search for Garland, I wanted to make this map here. Let me get rid of this. I wanted to make this generally accurate to where they are, so I was like, okay, let me make sure I get the exact locations when I draw these. And so I looked for it. That brings up this unprecedented movement detected on California earthquake fault capable of 8.0 temblor. And that brings me to look at this image, Ridgecrest. Tens of thousands of earthquakes hit near Ridgecrest July 4th, 2019. Okay, whatever, so be it. Tens of thousands of earthquake hit near Ridgecrest on July 4th. Garlock fault. So there's some kind of interaction with the Garlock fault in 2019. I didn't read this entirely, but it just the connection is there, where I'm like, maybe it's not exactly on the fault that like the energy can propagate along a, like if there's a crack opening, like open, like down at my palm, open, and then there, and then there, and there, like at some point maybe it extends further, so it's more likely perhaps for stronger earthquakes in times of stress to not actually happen necessarily along the fault itself, but instead like along this region. So maybe there's some like encouraging of the energy into this region by the process, what's going on. Kind of what I was thinking. And it's at that boundary. Like here's this boundary there that's kind of parallel to the San Andreas Fault. And then it's also in line with the Garlock Fault, which is, to me, like, yeah, that's like a tangential intersection. I mean, like, there's a weak point of some sort, perhaps. Like, it kind of makes sense, just that, like, why one in it? Like, that makes sense to me, that it's not that the earthquakes are, like, over here. They're much more over there. Or over here, like, they're, maybe if they were over here, that would also be somewhat reasonable, like the immediate intersection of the two. But like over at this boundary is pretty interesting. Like it even reminds me, if we look over at the system that we've been looking at over here, like this doesn't form. There's currents flowing across here at a width similar to there, where like one side is like the San Andreas and the other is where along that path, and then there's this intersection of another current, and at the last moment of their intersection, where they're kind of like this, they intersect at the last moment. That's where this structure forms, and then creates this eddy around it that forms a figure-8 structure here in this case. So it tends to happen like that, where intersections of currents are at their last moment form a some kind of like resistance structure and lead to things happening at the boundary like that, rather than like intermediarily within the stretch. Okay, let's keep going. So there's that. Here's the image just in general. So then I just started saying, you know, I'm going to put some other of my stuff in here, relevant animation, it being this one, so maybe I'll just open my animations for this at this point. Like I'm not completely sure about the directions here. Not completely sure about the directions. But generally speaking, there's currents flowing. Like this one, I'm very confident about that it's going into here and just etching this material out and creating a basin. This one going opposite it, I mean, kind of makes sense. In general, probably is, honestly, coming down from this region where this is happening. There's a current flowing down this way, and this pinches off. The current goes around like this, and generally comes out this way, though, also, like out this way, but maybe it then goes down and continues generally along this path, just at the boundary of the coastline. So maybe this current, in part, some of it, that's not going across North America, because this current does all sorts of things. Maybe it's also etching down along this way and contributing to this green pathway, which then would be pretty accurate when I put North Pole. Why are you still... Okay. So there's that image. And then this one, which I might as well bring up the bigger, my better file of. Not this one down here. This one's got a larger map, so the Rentian boundary against it, the Western Pacific was forming, which is here is the mid-Pacific Mountains in the Western Pacific, right here. That's fading in right there. And they were physically abutting the bottom of North America's, the Rentian boundary, not North America as a whole. And I believe that like Mexico was above it, and at all, like all of Central America pretty much, and all this, California even, above it, and it slid out from below. It might have been above, but I'm pretty sure it's below. I don't... Slid out from it though. 1 second. And this current came up from, generally, it's not perfect where I drew this because it's on the wrong size globe, so it's a little tricky. But generally, here's that location where the currents were swirling in an eddy. It was then at this mantle puncture hole location, and it projected jets that went up this way through Baja California, the Gulf here, up this way, ran into a batholith up here. The batholith under California ran in and went around it as the San Andreas Fault. And the other current over here, I believe. So this is where that other earthquake was in this area. Interesting, right there. Current went up this way as well, and then seemingly wrapped also around the batholith of California by going back around as the Garlock Fault line, and then wrapping up. Interestingly, here's Chicxulub. I didn't notice this before. I was like, I wonder where Chicxulub is in all this. It's like right in the center path. Yet another alignment in my research that really is perfectly in the center. Too perfectly in the center. Definitely a relationship. So then I made this. So here's the magnetic anomaly map and just the Google Earth. So we can see it fading in to see this chunk here. Maybe it's a little too zoomed in. Certainly if we look at the islands here, they're a little off. This coastline's a little off. Like, I tried my best. This was not fitting very exactly. Like, this is a little off. It's possible the San Andreas, in terms of the magnetic anomaly map, is below this structure rather than above it. Like, it ended up being drawn above it. I just did my best to overlay the Google Earth and the magnetic anomaly map, and then on Google Earth drew these fault lines and then faded in and out, and this is what we got. So it's not like I'm in any way trying to relate these fault lines to the magnetic anomaly map, but we see they go around this batholith. The San Andreas Fault is like, I can't go through this. Like, a current flow is running into it. It can't go through it. Which it seems like it also went up that way, current, but like split around the batholith. And when it went westward, it then went along this way and just created the San Andreas Fault line. Probably because it's not as supported over here. This whole stretch is not as supported as over here is. So it's more apparent, perhaps. I don't know exactly. And then also perhaps bend further out to just a wider width. And this current is related to the currents that came through here. These ones. This is the main current that then induced the San Andreas Fault line. Maybe even these are related. Before it opened, like, it started like that, and then something started working its way in from Mariana Trench side and widening the gap to a point where like it bends the structure this way relative to over here, where they probably were much more like atop one another initially. That's my guess. Okay, do I have anything else to add? Oh, let's see. And that's these on. So then I said low magnetic intensity anomalies behave as paths where currents can flow, whereas high magnetic intensities behave as locations that currents run into resistance rather than paths. The earthquake of Ojai at the boundary of a high intensity anomaly that perhaps is at the boundary that perhaps the storm brought undercurrents to. These are undercurrents below the crust that flow through like rivers. Perhaps the storm coupled with the Garlock Fault, so I mentioned this already, and other pre-existing features is making currents crash against the magnetic anomaly and upwell into turbulence, inducing quakes at the Ojai bound region. I wonder if I can find it right now. I was watching this video. I won't watch it. Magnitude 5.1 earthquake hits Ojai. KCL News. This one, they're immediately like talking about earthquakes with respect to weather and how it's been denied and how like this is gonna be like a case point or whatever, like a talking point that people who believe there to be a relationship between the two are gonna be like, dudes, like maybe are we sure that we know what we're talking about? Looks related, just saying. Let's see anything new going on here. Last few minutes, looks like it's not added anything new in the last half hour, so that's good. Let's see what else is going on this one. Anything new on this one? Still going off over there. That's interesting. Let's see. This location right here. If we go 1 day all magnitudes or 7 day all magnitudes. It becomes just data. Also, I noticed over here there was one. This one's today, I believe. That one was the 14th, and then today. Makes me, again, wonder if there's some kind of energetic relationship between this thing and over there. I don't know. Between the mantle puncture, secondary mantle puncture hole, and some kind of release of energy over this way, coupled with like most of it over this way. Almost like it's shooting energy that way, which is then putting like a gun. Like if you shoot a gun, it's got recoil behind you. Maybe it's some kind of recoil earthquake. I don't know. Don't know. Okay, guys, I gotta go before I get saying things. All right, peace out. Thanks for hanging out. See you next time.